When I opened my Silver Singles profile that Tuesday morning, Harold's message was waiting like a warm cup of coffee. Good morning, beautiful Martha. Thinking of you always. Can't wait for our dinner Friday. Love, your devoted H. I smiled, clutching my phone like a teenager with her first love note. At 71, after losing my husband of 45 years to cancer, Harold felt like a miracle. We'd been talking for 3 months, and every message made my heart flutter in a way I thought I'd never feel again. Harold was everything I'd dreamed of in a companion. 75 years old, distinguished silver hair, kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled in his photos. He claimed to be a retired architect who'd lost his wife 2 years ago. We understand each other's grief, he'd said in one of our early conversations. That's what makes us special. He never pressured me to meet too quickly. I want to know your heart first, he'd written. Physical attraction fades, but soul connection lasts forever. Such beautiful words from such a thoughtful man. That afternoon, my neighbor Eleanor knocked on my door, her laptop tucked under her arm and worry creased across her forehead. Martha, you need to see something, she said, stepping inside. I was helping my sister Janet set up her dating profile when we found this. She opened her laptop and showed me a Match.com profile. The photos were identical to Harold's, same distinguished smile, same kind eyes, same silver hair. But the name read Henry Richardson, instead of Harold Roberts. My stomach lurched. There must be some mistake, I whispered, staring at the screen. Martha, Eleanor said gently, look at the messages Janet received from Henry. She scrolled through the conversation, and my blood turned to ice water. Good morning, beautiful Janet. Thinking of you always. Can't wait for our dinner Friday. Love, your devoted H. The exact same words. Word for word. Even the timing was identical. Sent this morning at 7:15 a.m., just like mine. How is this possible? I managed to croak. Eleanor's expression grew grimmer. There's more. We found him on eHarmony too. She opened another tab. Harvey Richardson with the same photos, messaging a woman named Patricia in Denver. Same romantic poetry. Same sweet morning messages. Same story about being a widowed architect. I sank into my kitchen chair, the phone with Harold's loving message still clutched in my trembling hands. But he seems so genuine, I protested weakly. He knows things about me. He remembers every detail I've shared. Martha, Eleanor said carefully, when did he start asking about money? The question hit me like a slap. 2 weeks ago, Harold had mentioned his son's emergency surgery. Just worried about the bills, he'd said casually. Insurance doesn't cover everything these days. He hadn't asked directly, but the implication hung in our conversations like a shadow. Last week he'd mentioned his car breaking down. Might have to postpone our meeting until I can afford the repairs, he'd sighed over the phone. I'd almost offered to help before catching myself. He hasn't asked directly, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Eleanor pulled up another screen. Janet, show her the other site. On our time, Hugo Richardson was charming a woman named Susan in Miami with identical messages. Same photos, same story, same romantic poems I thought he'd written just for me. How many women is he talking to? I asked, nausea rising in my throat. We've found 4 different profiles so far, Eleanor said grimly. Harold, Henry, Harvey, and Hugo. All using the same pictures, all claiming to be widowed architects. I stared at the messages I'd treasured, now realizing they were mass-produced lies. The Swiss chocolates he'd brought to our last coffee date. Only the best for my queen. Probably came from the discount store. The handwritten poem about my beautiful eyes that had made me cry happy tears was likely copied from the internet. Martha, Eleanor said gently, my daughter Sarah works in tech. She can run a deeper search on his phone number if you want. I nodded numbly, handing over Harold's contact information. Within 20 minutes Sarah called back. Mrs. Thompson, that number is connected to multiple dating profiles across 6 different states. This man is running a professional romance scam operation. The FBI has warnings about this exact pattern. I hung up and stared at the messages again. 3 months of daily conversations, sweet phone calls, and growing intimacy, all lies. I thought of how carefully I'd chosen my outfit for our coffee dates, how I'd gotten my hair done special, how I'd started imagining a future together. What do we do? I asked Eleanor, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled grimly. We're going to find the other women he's scamming, and then we're going to give Harold a surprise he'll never forget. That evening, I sat in my living room staring at my phone, Harold's goodnight message glowing on the screen. Sweet dreams, my darling Martha. Tomorrow feels like forever until I can talk to you again. But tomorrow, Harold was about to discover that sometimes the lonely old ladies you think you're scamming are smarter, more connected, and far more dangerous than you ever imagined. I typed back, looking forward to our dinner Friday night, darling. But Harold wouldn't be the only one getting dinner that night. The next morning, Eleanor arrived with her laptop and a determination that reminded me of my grandmother preparing for battle. We're going hunting, she announced, setting up at my kitchen table. If Harold thinks he can fool us, he's about to learn what happens when you mess with retired teachers. Eleanor had taught high school for 30 years. I'd run the local library for 42. Between us, we'd mastered research, organization, and the fine art of catching people in lies. First step, Eleanor said, opening a spreadsheet. We catalog everything we know. She created columns. Real name, fake names, phone numbers, email addresses, dating sites, stories used, photos, and most importantly, other victims. Within 2 hours, we'd expanded our search. Martha, look at this, Eleanor said, pointing at her screen. I found him on Zoosk as Harrison, Christian Mingle as Howard, and Plenty of Fish as Hank. This man has more identities than a spy novel. Each profile told the same tragic story with slight variations. Sometimes his wife died of cancer, sometimes a car accident. Sometimes he was an architect, sometimes an engineer. But always a widower, always lonely, always looking for one special woman to complete his golden years. The photos are stolen too, Eleanor continued, showing me a reverse image search. These pictures belong to a real architect named David Mitchell from Portland. His daughter posted them on Facebook 3 years ago. Poor man has no idea his face is being used to scam elderly women. My phone buzzed with Harold's usual morning message. Good morning, sunshine. Your beauty lights up my world. I felt sick reading words I'd once treasured. Eleanor's sister Janet called from Phoenix. We found 2 more, she reported. My friend at the senior center recognized the photos. He's been courting a woman named Linda in Seattle as Lawrence, and another named Dorothy in Atlanta as David. That makes 6 women we know of, Eleanor calculated grimly. Probably dozens more. I called the number Harold had given me just to test something. Hi, darling, I said when he answered. I was thinking about you. My beautiful Martha, he replied in that honeyed voice I'd fallen for. You're always on my mind. I was just about to call you. Really? What were you doing? Just sitting here, reading a book of poetry, thinking about writing you another verse. I hung up and immediately called Janet. Call Henry right now, I told her. Ask what he's doing. 5 minutes later, Janet called back. He said he was reading poetry, thinking about writing me a verse. He's talking to multiple women simultaneously, Eleanor observed. Probably has a script for every situation. That afternoon, we created our own dating profile on Silver Singles using Eleanor's information but my photo. Within hours, Harold had messaged us with the identical opening line he'd used on me 3 months ago. Your smile caught my attention, but your profile touched my heart. He doesn't even remember he already knows you, Eleanor marveled. To him, we're just marks. We spent Wednesday creating a group text chain we called the Investigation Squad. Janet in Phoenix connected us with Linda in Seattle and Dorothy in Atlanta. Each woman brought screenshots, voice messages, and heartbreaking stories of manipulation. Linda, a retired nurse, had been planning to cash in her retirement account to help Lawrence with his son's medical bills. Dorothy, a widow of 3 years, had already sent David $5,000 for his car emergency. Ladies, I said during our conference call, this man has stolen more than money. He's stolen our trust, our hope, and our dignity. But we're going to get it back. Thursday evening, I received the message I'd been expecting. Martha, darling, I hate to burden you with my troubles, but I'm in a terrible situation. My grandson was in an accident, and the insurance won't cover the ambulance bill. It's $2,500, and I just don't have it. I would never ask, but you're the only person I trust. The manipulation was textbook perfect. He'd waited until I was emotionally invested, created urgency, made it about family, claimed he'd never ask anyone else, and chosen an amount large enough to matter, but small enough to seem reasonable. What did you tell him? Eleanor asked when I called. I told him I'd need to think about it overnight, I replied. But I also told him I loved him and would do anything to help. Eleanor chuckled darkly. Perfect. Keep him believing you're hooked. That night, we finalized our plan. Each of the 5 women would continue playing along, keeping Harold believing he had us all on the hook. Meanwhile, Linda's nephew, a tech investigator for the Seattle Police Department, was tracing Harold's digital footprint. We have his IP address, his phone records, and we're tracking his financial accounts, Linda reported. But here's the interesting part. His real name is Robert Thompson, he's 68 years old, not 75, and he's married. Married? Dorothy gasped. Very married. Wife's name is Nancy. They live at 1247 Oak Street in Denver. She has no idea what her husband does for work, while she's at her job at the department store. Friday morning arrived with Harold's usual romantic message, but this time I read it with cold satisfaction instead of warm feelings. Can't wait for tonight, my love. Romano's at 7, our usual table. I have something special to tell you. What do you think his special news is? Eleanor asked. I smiled grimly. Probably that he loves me and wants to move our relationship to the next level. Classic scammer escalation. Make it serious right before asking for serious money. Eleanor handed me a manila envelope. This contains everything we've compiled. Photos of his other profiles, transcripts of identical messages to all his victims, financial records, and most importantly, Nancy Thompson's phone number. You called his wife? Not yet. We thought she deserved to hear about her husband's activities from someone who understands betrayal. I looked at the clock. In 10 hours, Harold would walk into Romano's restaurant expecting to manipulate another lonely widow into opening her wallet. Instead, he was about to discover what happens when you underestimate the intelligence, connections, and righteous fury of women who've lived long enough to recognize a snake when they see one. Are you ready, Martha? Eleanor asked. I straightened my shoulders, thinking of every woman Harold had lied to, every heart he'd broken, every savings account he'd targeted. Harold thinks tonight is about him getting money from me, I said. He has no idea tonight is about him paying a bill that's been 3 months overdue. Friday evening, I arrived at Romano's restaurant 15 minutes early, wearing my best dress, and carrying a leather purse that held 5 manila envelopes instead of a checkbook. Eleanor sat at the bar, pretending to nurse a glass of wine while keeping watch. Our other allies were positioned strategically around the restaurant. Linda had flown in from Seattle. Dorothy drove up from Atlanta, and Janet came from Phoenix. We looked like any group of older women having dinner, except we were about to serve justice as the main course. Harold walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, wearing his best charcoal suit and that practiced smile that had once made my heart flutter. Now it made my skin crawl. He spotted me at our usual corner table and approached with arms outstretched. My beautiful Martha, he said, leaning down for a kiss. I allowed it, reminding myself this was the last lie he'd ever tell me. Harold, darling, I said, gesturing to the empty chairs around our table. I hope you don't mind, but I've invited some friends to join us. His smile faltered slightly. Friends? That's when Patricia walked in, followed by Linda, then Dorothy, then Janet. Each carried a manila envelope. Each wore a smile that could have frozen hell. Harold's face went through a fascinating color progression. Normal, pale, flushed, then a sickly gray I'd never seen on human skin. Ladies, I announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I'd like you to meet Harold Roberts. Or Henry Richardson. Or Harvey Richardson. Or Hugo Richardson. Or Lawrence Mitchell. Or David Mitchell. He's been quite the busy man in his retirement. This must be some mistake, Harold started, but Patricia cut him off by placing her phone on the table. Play the voicemail, Martha, she said. Harold's voice filled the restaurant. My darling Patricia, you're the love I never thought I'd find again. Our connection is destiny. I was meant to find you. Before he could protest, Linda played hers. Sweet Linda, fate brought us together. You're my soulmate, the missing piece of my heart. Dorothy's recording followed. Beautiful Dorothy, I've never felt this way about anyone. You complete me. The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Even the servers stopped moving, sensing the drama unfolding. Here's what's going to happen, Robert Thompson, I said, using his real name and watching him flinch. Each envelope contains copies of every message, every photo, every lie you told each of us. The first envelope goes to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. We've already filed a report, and they're very interested in your operation. Harold's hands were shaking now. You don't understand. The second envelope, Linda continued smoothly, goes to the Better Business Bureau and every senior dating site we could find. Your photos and phone number will be flagged on every platform. The third envelope, Dorothy added with sweet venom, goes to Channel 7 News. They're doing a series on romance scammers, and you're going to be their star. Janet leaned forward. The fourth envelope contains a full financial analysis. We know about the 17 other women you've scammed across 8 states. The ones who sent you money. The FBI is very interested in that mail fraud charge. Harold was sweating now, his practiced charm completely evaporated. Please, I can explain. I never meant. I held up the fifth envelope. This one's my personal favorite, Harold. It goes to Nancy Thompson of 1247 Oak Street in Denver. Your wife of 23 years. The color drained completely from his face. How did you? She's filing for divorce Monday morning, Linda said cheerfully. Apparently, she was very interested to learn about your business trips and your romantic correspondence with dozens of women. The restaurant manager approached our table. Is everything all right here? Perfect, I said, standing up. Mr. Thompson was just leaving. Permanently. Harold tried one last manipulation, reaching for my hand. Martha, please. You have to understand. I do care about you. All of you. I just got confused. Dorothy laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Save it for the judge, Robert. That's my nephew over there recording everything on his phone. He's a prosecutor who specializes in elder fraud cases. A young man at the bar waved. Harold looked like he might vomit. Oh, and Harold? Janet added sweetly. Your Swiss chocolates that you gave each of us? They're $3.99 at Walmart. We checked. As we gathered our purses, Linda turned back to Harold, who was still sitting frozen at the table. By the way, the real David Mitchell, the man whose photos you stole, he's actually very nice. We sent him your dating profile so he could report the identity theft. His lawyer is also very interested in meeting you. We walked out together, leaving Harold sitting alone with the wreckage of his scam operation spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. 6 months later, Robert Thompson was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for mail fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. The judge ordered him to pay $87,000 in restitution to his confirmed victims. Apparently, we weren't even close to being his only targets. Nancy Thompson got half of everything in the divorce plus spousal support. She sent us a thank you card. You ladies saved me from wasting any more years on a man who was never worth my time. But here's the sweetest part of our revenge. The 5 of us became genuine friends. We have monthly video calls, sharing stories and watching each other's backs. Patricia moved closer to her grandchildren in Denver. Linda started a seniors fraud prevention group in Seattle. Dorothy opened an online boutique selling vintage jewelry. Janet began teaching digital literacy classes to help other seniors avoid scams. And me? I met a wonderful man named Frank at the community center 3 months later. A real man with one name, one life, and one heart that's entirely devoted to one woman. Eleanor did a complete background check and he passed with flying colors. Last week, we received a letter from a support group in Nevada. They'd heard about our story through the news coverage and wanted advice on dealing with romance scammers in their community. We're now unofficial consultants for the FBI's Elder Fraud Prevention Program. Harold thought he was juggling 5 lonely old ladies who didn't know each other. Instead, he discovered he was playing with 5 women who understood that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with witnesses, evidence, and a system that finally listens when we speak. Sometimes justice needs a group effort. And sometimes the best way to heal from betrayal is to make sure it never happens to anyone else. The last message I sent to Harold's old number, right before it was disconnected, was simple. Consider this your graduation from Romance Scammer University. Your final grade, F for fraud. Harold learned that when you underestimate retired teachers and librarians, you don't just fail the class, you fail in front of the entire world. 3 weeks after Harold's public humiliation at Romano's restaurant, the real work began. What we'd accomplished that night felt like justice, but justice without follow-through is just theater. We learned that lesson when Dorothy received a troubling phone call. Martha, she said during our morning conference call, I got a call from a woman in Texas. She saw the news story about Harold and recognized him. She said he contacted her on Silver Singles again, using new photos and calling himself Hamilton. My blood ran cold. He's back online already? Prison doesn't start for 3 months, Linda reminded us. He's still out on bail, and apparently he thinks he can squeeze in a few more victims before sentencing. That's when Eleanor announced her decision. Ladies, we're not done. One humiliation isn't enough. We need to make sure Harold never scams another woman as long as he lives. Within hours, we'd transformed from revenge seekers into fraud prevention activists. Our first step was creating the Harold Thompson Warning Network, a private Facebook group where victims could share information about his new identities and profiles. Patricia, who'd worked in journalism before retirement, reached out to her former contacts. Every major news station in the country wants to interview us, she reported. They're calling us the senior squad and saying we're heroes. Heroes. I laughed. We're just angry women who got tired of being treated like fools. But the interviews led to something bigger. The FBI's Cybercrime Division invited us to Washington, D.C., to consult on their new elder fraud prevention initiative. They wanted to understand how Harold had operated so successfully for so long. The problem, Agent Sarah Mitchell explained in the conference room, is that most victims are too embarrassed to report. They're ashamed they were fooled, so scammers keep finding new targets. Then we changed the narrative, I said firmly. Make it about the criminal's skill at manipulation, not the victim's gullibility. Our first public appearance was on Good Morning America. Robin Roberts introduced us as 5 women who turned heartbreak into hope. We each told our story, but more importantly, we explained Harold's techniques so viewers could recognize them. Romance scammers follow a script, Linda explained to the camera. They create urgency, claim exclusive love, and always have a reason they can't meet in person or video chat. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, we'd received over 500 emails from other scam victims. Many had never reported their experiences to authorities. We realized we'd accidentally become the voice for a hidden epidemic. Eleanor had the idea that changed everything. What if we create a nonprofit? Legitimize what we're doing. 2 months later, we established the Silver Shield Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting seniors from romance scams. Our mission was simple: education, prevention, and support for victims. Our first major victory came when Janet's nephew, the prosecutor, called with news. Harold tried to contact another woman using fake photos of a dead soldier. The military got involved, and now he's facing federal identity theft charges too. That's another 5 years added to his sentence. But Harold wasn't finished surprising us. During our foundation's first board meeting, Patricia's phone rang with an unknown number. On speaker, we heard a familiar voice. "This is Harold Thompson. I wanted to apologize to all of you." The silence in the room was deafening. "I know you won't believe me," he continued, "but losing everything, my wife, my freedom, my reputation, it's made me realize what I became. I want to help you prevent other men from following my path." "This is another scam," Dorothy whispered, but I held up my hand. "What are you proposing, Harold?" I asked. "Let me tell your audiences how I operated. The psychology I used, the techniques, the red flags you should teach people to watch for. I'm going to prison anyway. Let me do something useful with the time I have left." Agent Mitchell, who was attending our meeting, spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, this is Agent Mitchell from the FBI. Are you offering to cooperate with federal investigators?" "I am," Harold said. "I want to help you catch the others. There's a whole network of men doing this. I know their methods, their websites, their communication channels." 3 weeks later, Harold sat in our foundation's conference room, surrounded by FBI agents, cameras, and the 5 women whose lives he'd tried to destroy. It was surreal, the predator now helping to hunt his former pack. "The first thing you need to understand," Harold told the camera, "is that we target loneliness, not stupidity. These are intelligent, successful women. We exploit their capacity for love, not any weakness." His cooperation led to the arrest of 17 other romance scammers across 12 states. The FBI called it the largest romance fraud takedown in history. But our proudest moment came 6 months later, when we received a letter from Margaret, a 68-year-old widow in Oregon. She'd watched our Good Morning America appearance and recognized the techniques a man named William was using on her. "Instead of sending him the $3,000 he requested," she wrote, "I contacted local police and helped them set up a sting operation. William is now in jail, and I still have my savings. Thank you for teaching me that being suspicious isn't being paranoid, it's being smart." Harold served his 8-year sentence and was released last month. He now works as a consultant for the FBI's fraud prevention program and speaks at senior centers about romance scam tactics. He sends us quarterly reports on his activities per the terms of his plea agreement. The Silver Shield Foundation has helped prevent over $2.3 million in fraud losses and provided support to more than 1,200 victims. We've testified before Congress about the need for better protections for elderly Americans online. Last week, Harold called to tell us about his latest speaking engagement at a retirement community in Florida. 13 people came up afterward to say they'd been contacted by suspicious profiles, he reported. All of them said they'd be more careful now. Good, I told him. That's 13 fewer victims you and your former colleagues will never claim. Martha, Harold said quietly, I know I can never undo what I did to you and the others. But I hope someday I can balance the scales. Harold, I replied, the scales don't balance. They just get reset. Keep helping people, and maybe someday that's enough. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about turning them into an ally for your cause. 2 years after Harold's imprisonment, the Silver Shield Foundation occupied 3 floors of a downtown Denver office building, and I never imagined my retirement would involve congressional testimonies and international fraud conferences. But life has a way of surprising you, especially when you refuse to stay in the victim box. The morning everything changed started with Eleanor's frantic phone call. Martha, turn on Channel 7. Now, the headline made my coffee go cold. Romance scam victim sues senior advocacy group. Below it, a familiar face filled the screen. Nancy Thompson, Harold's ex-wife, standing beside a slick attorney outside the courthouse. Mrs. Thompson claims the Silver Shield Foundation's public campaign destroyed her life, the reporter announced. She's seeking $2.5 million in damages, alleging defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I watched Nancy's statement with growing disbelief. These women turned my private hell into their public crusade, she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. They destroyed my marriage, my privacy, and my ability to move on. Harold was sick, not evil. He needed help, not humiliation. Eleanor arrived within minutes, laptop in hand and fury in her eyes. She's claiming we ruined her reputation and caused her to lose her job at the department store, she said, scrolling through the lawsuit. Apparently, customers recognized her from news interviews and made her work environment hostile. The irony was suffocating. The woman who'd benefited from Harold's scam money for years was now trying to profit from his exposure. There's more, Eleanor continued grimly. She's hired Blackstone and Associates, the same firm that defends corporate whistleblower cases. This isn't about hurt feelings, Martha. Someone with deep pockets is backing this lawsuit. Within hours, our foundation's board convened an emergency meeting. Linda flew in from Seattle, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. My grandson Googled me for a school project, she said quietly. The first result was an article calling me a vigilante senior citizen who destroyed an innocent woman's marriage. Patricia spread newspaper clippings across the conference table. The narrative is shifting. Look at these headlines. Revenge plot gone too far. When victims become bullies. The dark side of senior justice. Dorothy slammed her hand on the table. Nancy Thompson knew exactly what her husband was doing. She spent the money he stole from us. She lived off our heartbreak for 3 years. Can we prove that? Asked our legal counsel, James Morrison, a pro bono attorney we'd met through the FBI. Nancy's lawyer is claiming she was another victim of Harold's deception. That's when Janet revealed our ace in the hole. Actually, we can prove it, she said, producing a manila folder. Remember the financial investigation Linda's nephew conducted? Harold didn't just steal money. He deposited it into joint accounts. Nancy's signature is on every withdrawal over $500. James examined the bank records with increasing interest. These show a pattern of knowledge and participation, he said. But we need more. We need proof she actively helped him scam victims. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. That evening, Harold called me from prison. Martha, I heard about Nancy's lawsuit. I want to testify for your foundation. Why would you help us against your ex-wife? I asked suspiciously. Because she's lying, Harold said flatly. Nancy didn't just know about the scams. She helped plan them. She researched your profiles, suggested what personality types I should target, even helped write some of the romantic messages. Can you prove that? I can do better than prove it. I recorded her. Nancy insisted we keep recordings of victim conversations to study their responses. She wanted to perfect the psychological manipulation. Those recordings still exist. 3 days later, FBI agents executed a search warrant on Nancy's apartment. They found Harold's laptop, hidden in her bedroom closet, containing over 200 hours of recorded conversations with scam victims, including detailed discussions between Harold and Nancy about manipulation strategies. The most damaging recording was from 2 years ago. Nancy's voice crystal clear. The library woman seems lonely and smart. Use the dead husband angle but make it cancer, not accident. Smart women need emotional logic for their decisions. The library woman was me. And now Nancy Thompson was about to learn that some women fight back. The media erupted when James played Nancy's recordings at a press conference. Her lawsuit collapsed within 48 hours, and her attorney withdrew, citing newly discovered evidence incompatible with our client's stated position. But Nancy wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, she appeared on a daytime talk show, tears streaming down her face. I was brainwashed by an abusive husband, she claimed. Harold manipulated me into helping him, just like he manipulated his victims. She's good, Eleanor admitted grudgingly as we watched. The abuse victim angle is smart. That's when Dorothy surprised us all. I've been doing research on Nancy Thompson, she announced at our next meeting. She wasn't Harold's first wife. He was married twice before, and guess what? Both ex-wives reported similar business trips and unexplained income. You think Nancy has done this before? Linda asked. I think Nancy is the mastermind and Harold was her front man, Dorothy replied. Look at this. She spread documents across the table showing Nancy's employment history. 6 different jobs in 8 years, all ending with allegations of theft or fraud. Always dismissed without charges, always moving to a new city afterward. She's been running romance scams for over a decade, Dorothy continued. Harold wasn't her first partner. He was just the most successful. Until he got caught. James leaned forward, studying the timeline. If we can prove Nancy has a pattern of recruiting men to run romance scams, that changes everything. She's not a victim. She's a serial predator. Our investigation took 6 months, but we built an ironclad case. Nancy had recruited 3 different men over 12 years to run romance scams while she handled the technical side, creating profiles, researching victims, managing communications. Harold was her third and most profitable partner. The breakthrough came when Patricia tracked down Nancy's first husband, Michael Davies, living quietly in Phoenix. She approached me on a dating site in 2012, he told us over video call. Said she had a business idea that would let us retire early. At first it seemed harmless, just chatting with lonely women online. When did you realize it was fraud? James asked. Michael's voice grew heavy. When she showed me the bank statements. We'd taken $47,000 from 12 different women in 8 months. I wanted to stop, but Nancy said we were providing a service, giving them someone to talk to. What happened when you tried to quit? She recorded me on every call with victims. Said if I ever left her or talked to police, she'd turn me in as the mastermind. I was trapped. Michael paused, then added. When I finally escaped, I moved to Phoenix and never dated online again. I've been terrified she'd find me for 10 years. Similar stories emerged from Nancy's second husband, Robert Kim, and 2 other men she'd recruited but never married. All described the same pattern. Nancy identifying them as lonely, financially struggling, and psychologically vulnerable. She'd seduce them, introduce the scam gradually, and use recorded evidence to maintain control. Harold was different, Robert Kim explained. He actually enjoyed it. Nancy didn't have to threaten him. He was eager to expand the operation. That's why they lasted longer than her other partnerships. The FBI reopened Nancy's case, and she was indicted on 27 counts of federal conspiracy, mail fraud, and racketeering. During her trial, Harold testified against her, describing how she'd recruited him through a dating site, gradually introducing the scam concept. Nancy taught me everything, Harold testified. The psychology, the timing, the emotional triggers. She said lonely women were easy marks because they wanted to believe in love more than they wanted to protect their money. But the most damaging testimony came from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a forensic psychologist who analyzed Nancy's methods. Ms. Thompson's approach shows sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation, she testified. She targeted men with specific vulnerabilities, recent divorces, financial stress, social isolation, then systematically exploited those weaknesses. In your professional opinion, the prosecutor asked, was Harold Thompson a victim of Nancy Thompson's manipulation? Dr. Mitchell shook her head. Harold was initially recruited as a victim, but the evidence shows he became an enthusiastic partner. Nancy Thompson creates victims. Harold Thompson chose to become a predator. Nancy was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. During sentencing, the judge noted that she'd shown sophisticated criminal planning spanning over a decade, with complete absence of remorse for exploiting elderly victims' capacity for love. After Nancy's conviction, something unexpected happened. Harold's original sentence was reduced by 3 years in exchange for his testimony and continued cooperation with federal investigators. He would be eligible for parole in 18 months. The foundation received a letter from Harold that week. I know this doesn't balance the scales, but Nancy's conviction means she can't hurt anyone else the way she hurt you. Thank you for never giving up on the truth. But the victory felt incomplete until we received a call from Agent Sarah Mitchell 3 weeks later. Ladies, we need you to look at something, she said. Arriving at our office with a thick file, Nancy Thompson made one more play from prison. She spread photographs across our conference table, screenshots of social media profiles, dating sites, and email accounts, all created within the past month, all using variations of our names and photos. Someone's impersonating you, Agent Mitchell continued, creating fake profiles on senior dating sites, using your foundation credentials to gain trust, then running romance scams. We've identified at least 12 potential victims so far. Eleanor picked up one of the screenshots. It was a silver singles profile using her photo and calling itself Eleanor S., romance scam survivor and advocate. The bio read, after surviving my own romance scam experience, I help other women find genuine love online. I understand your fears and can help you navigate safe dating. This is diabolical, Patricia whispered, looking at her own impersonated profile. She's using our reputations to create trust, then exploiting it. How is Nancy running this operation from prison? Linda asked. Agent Mitchell's expression darkened. We don't think she is. We think someone else has taken over her network. Someone who knows her methods and wants revenge against your foundation. Dorothy was studying the profiles when she suddenly went pale. Martha, look at this message thread. She handed me a printout showing a conversation between fake Eleanor and a 73-year-old widower named Frank. Frank. My Frank. The man I'd been dating for the past year. The fake Eleanor had convinced him that the real Martha, me, was running a romance scam operation and targeting him for money. She'd provided evidence of my financial accounts and suggested he was in danger. Frank's final message made my heart stop. Thank you for warning me about Martha. I'm ending our relationship tonight. I can't believe I almost fell for another scammer. I looked up at my 4 friends. These women who'd become my family through shared betrayal and triumph. Nancy Thompson was in prison, but her poison was still spreading, still reaching into my life, still trying to destroy everything we'd built. Ladies, I said, standing up and straightening my shoulders. It looks like we have one more war to fight. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen staring at Frank's goodbye text. I can't believe I almost fell for another scammer. The words blurred as tears I hadn't shed in years finally came. Nancy Thompson was reaching from her prison cell to destroy the one genuine relationship I'd built since my husband's death. Eleanor found me there an hour later, still in my bathrobe, phone in my trembling hands. Martha will fix this, she said, pulling up a chair. Frank loves you. When he learns the truth. What if he doesn't believe me? I interrupted. What if he thinks I'm just another manipulator with a better story? Then he's not the man you thought he was, Eleanor replied firmly. But I don't think that's the case. By noon, our entire team had assembled. Dorothy arrived with printouts of every fake profile using our identities. Linda flew in that afternoon, and Patricia drove down from Fort Collins. Agent Mitchell joined us remotely from her FBI office. We've identified the operations hub, Agent Mitchell reported. The fake profiles are being managed from a location in Miami. Someone's using Nancy's old network, her contact lists, her psychological profiles of potential victims. Who? Janet asked. We think it's Nancy's daughter, Christine Thompson. She's 28, works in tech, and has been visiting her mother in prison every week since the conviction. I felt my blood chill. Nancy had a daughter she'd never mentioned during all our investigations. A daughter who'd grown up watching her mother manipulate people for money. A daughter who probably blamed us for destroying her family. Christine has access to all of Nancy's files, Agent Mitchell continued. She knows every technique, every psychological trigger, every victim profile her mother developed over 12 years. But she's added a new element, revenge. Eleanor leaned forward. What do you mean? The fake profiles aren't just running romance scams. They're specifically targeting people connected to your foundation. Board members, donors, volunteers. And they're not just after money, they're trying to destroy your reputations. Dorothy spread out a timeline she'd created. Look at this pattern. First, Christine targets people close to us. Then she uses those relationships to isolate us. Frank was just the beginning. What do you mean? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. She's contacted your daughter, Sarah, Patricia said quietly, sliding a printout across the table. Using a fake profile claiming to be a victim of your foundation's negligence. Sarah's been getting messages for 2 weeks about how you've become obsessed with revenge and are exploiting elderly victims for publicity. My hands shook as I read the messages. Christine had crafted them perfectly, just enough truth mixed with lies to seem credible. She'd mentioned details about my life that only family would know, making the fake victim seem like someone who'd researched me thoroughly. Sarah called me yesterday. I admitted, asked if I was okay mentally, and whether the foundation work was consuming my life. I thought she was just worried about my schedule. Linda placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Christine's systematic. She's not just attacking randomly. She's targeting the relationships that matter most to each of us. Agent Mitchell's voice came through the speaker with grim authority. Ladies, Christine Thompson isn't just continuing her mother's work. She's weaponizing it. Nancy stole money. Christine is stealing lives. That evening, I called Frank from our foundation office, surrounded by my 4 closest friends. I'd rehearsed what to say, but when he answered, his voice was cold, formal. Hello, Martha. Frank, please let me explain. Someone is impersonating Eleanor and trying to destroy our relationship. The woman who contacted you isn't my friend. She's the daughter of a romance scammer we helped put in prison. Martha, I've seen the evidence. Bank records, FBI reports. You've been involved in elaborate financial schemes for years. Those are real FBI reports about crimes committed against us, not by us. Frank, you know me. You've met Eleanor. Patricia, all of them. Do we seem like criminals? Silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, I don't know what to believe anymore. The woman who contacted me knew things about you that only someone close would know. She had photographs of you from events I've never seen. Because she's been stalking us, Frank. She has access to her mother's files, her research, her photographs. Please, just give me one chance to prove this to you. I need time, Martha. I'm sorry, but I need to think. After he hung up, I sat in the silence of our office, surrounded by evidence of Nancy's crimes and her daughter's revenge. 25 years of marriage, I said finally. Then 5 years alone. And when I finally find someone who makes me feel alive again, a convicted felon's daughter destroys it from prison. Eleanor stood up with that determined look I'd learned to respect. Not if we destroy her first. What are you thinking? Christine Thompson thinks she knows us. She's studied us, profiled us, learned our vulnerabilities. But she's made one crucial mistake. Which is? Eleanor smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who'd spent 30 years outsmarting high school students. She thinks we're victims. She doesn't understand that we're predators now too. And we're about to hunt the hunter. Dorothy was already opening her laptop. What's the plan? We give Christine exactly what she wants, Eleanor said. We let her think she's winning. And then we turn her own methods against her. Patricia looked up from her phone. How? Simple, I said, understanding flooding through me. We create fake victims of Christine's scam operation. We build evidence of her crimes. And then we let her mother find out that her daughter is following in her footsteps. Linda smiled grimly. Nancy Thompson spent 15 years building her daughter's respect. Let's see how much family loyalty survives when Nancy realizes Christine is heading for the same prison cell. Agent Mitchell's voice came through the speaker. Ladies, whatever you're planning, remember you're not vigilantes. You're consultants. Everything has to be legal and documentable. Oh, it will be, I promised. Christine Thompson is about to learn the difference between studying predators and becoming prey. The war was about to begin, and this time we had the element of surprise. Our war against Christine Thompson began at dawn with Dorothy's brilliant tactical insight. We don't fight her scams. We make her fight ours. Within 48 hours, we'd created what appeared to be the perfect mark for Christine's operation. Margaret Williams, a 69-year-old widow from Seattle with a substantial inheritance and a recently deceased tech executive husband. Her online footprint looked authentic because we'd spent years building the Silver Shield Foundation's network of real people with real stories. Eleanor, playing Margaret, had spent decades perfecting the art of seeming innocent while being anything but. She created social media profiles showing a lonely woman with expensive jewelry, recent travel photos, and just enough personal information to seem vulnerable. Christine took the bait within a week. "Hello, Margaret," came the message on Silver Singles. "I'm Jennifer from the Silver Shield Foundation. I've been helping women like us avoid romance scams. I noticed your profile and wanted to reach out. There are some red flags about men who might be targeting widows in your area." The message was perfectly crafted, positioning Christine as a protector while simultaneously gathering intelligence about Eleanor's fictional wealth and vulnerability. But Christine had made one crucial error. She was using our own foundation's name without realizing we had ways to monitor every mention of it online. "She's good," Eleanor admitted after receiving Christine's third message. "She's building trust by warning me about fake threats while positioning herself as my guardian angel." But we were better. Through our FBI contacts, we'd equipped Eleanor with recording software that captured every call, every video chat, every message exchange. Christine thought she was studying a victim. She was actually providing evidence for her own prosecution. Over the next month, Christine gradually escalated her approach. First, she discovered that Margaret was being targeted by multiple romance scammers. Then she offered to help screen Margaret's online interactions for red flags. Finally, she suggested that Margaret needed professional assistance managing her digital presence. For a fee, of course. "She wants $5,000 upfront to secure my online accounts against scammers," Eleanor reported during our morning briefing. "Plus monthly fees for ongoing protection services." She's essentially running a protection racket, using our foundation's reputation. But the breakthrough came when Christine made her fatal mistake. During a video call with Eleanor, she mentioned personal details about my relationship with Frank that only someone with access to Nancy's files would know. "Margaret, I have to warn you about something disturbing," Christine said, her young face filled with practiced concern. "We've been tracking a woman named Martha Thompson who's been using the Silver Shield Foundation as a front for her own romance scams. She targeted a lovely man named Frank and nearly destroyed his financial stability." Eleanor, maintaining perfect composure, asked innocently, "How do you know so much about this Martha person?" "My mother was one of her victims," Christine lied smoothly. "Martha's operation is sophisticated. She creates fake victim stories to gain sympathy, then manipulates older men into giving her money and property. My mother lost her house because of Martha's schemes." Every word was recorded. Every lie was documented. Christine had just confessed to using inside information from her criminal mother to run her own fraud operation. That evening, Agent Mitchell reviewed our evidence with barely contained excitement. "This is federal wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Christine's operation spans multiple states, and she's using your foundation's federal trademark without permission. That's another felony." "But we need more," I insisted. "We need proof that Nancy is directing this from prison." "Actually," Agent Mitchell smiled, "we already have that. Christine's been depositing money into Nancy's prison account every week since the scam operation started. Financial records show the deposits correlate exactly with successful victim payments. Nancy's getting a cut of every dollar her daughter steals." The final phase of our operation began with a phone call that changed everything. Frank contacted me for the first time in 2 months. "Martha, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "The woman who warned me about you contacted me again yesterday. She wanted money to protect me from your next scam. When I refused, she became threatening. That's when I realized she was the real criminal. Frank, I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I let someone poison what we had. If you'll give me another chance, I want to help you stop her." The sting operation we planned was elegant in its simplicity. Frank would contact Christine, claiming he'd discovered Martha was targeting him again. He'd offer to pay Christine for protection services, but insist on meeting in person to hand over the money. Christine agreed immediately, apparently convinced that Frank was exactly the kind of frightened, confused older man she could easily manipulate. We arranged the meeting at a Denver restaurant, with FBI agents positioned throughout the area and recording equipment capturing every word. Frank wore a wire and carried $5,000 in marked bills. Christine arrived looking younger than her 28 years, with an innocent face that perfectly masked her predatory nature. She ordered coffee and spent 20 minutes building Frank's trust, describing her tireless work protecting seniors from scammers like Martha. "My foundation has helped hundreds of people," she said earnestly. "We're fighting a war against predators who target vulnerable older adults." "How do you know so much about Martha's methods?" Frank asked, following our script perfectly. "My mother was one of her first victims," Christine replied. "Martha destroyed our family. That's why I've dedicated my life to stopping her." When Frank handed over the envelope of marked bills, Christine smiled with genuine warmth. "You're safe now, Frank. Martha Thompson will never hurt you." Those were the last words she spoke as a free woman. FBI agents moved in immediately, arresting Christine on federal fraud charges while she still held our marked money. 6 months later, Christine Thompson was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, the same facility where her mother was serving her 15-year sentence. The judge noted that Christine had weaponized her mother's criminal knowledge to create a new generation of fraud, showing complete disregard for elderly victims' welfare. But our most satisfying victory came 3 weeks after Christine's arrest, when Nancy Thompson called our foundation from prison. "I want to apologize," she said, her voice broken in a way I'd never heard before. "Christine told me she was using my files to help elderly people avoid scams. I had no idea she was running them." Whether Nancy was lying or telling the truth didn't matter anymore. Both women were in prison, their criminal enterprise was destroyed, and Frank was back in my life, more committed than ever to our relationship. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's letting them destroy themselves. 3 years after Christine's imprisonment, the Silver Shield Foundation had evolved into something neither Nancy Thompson nor her daughter could have imagined. What began as 5 angry women seeking revenge had become a federal task force with congressional funding and international recognition. But success always brings new enemies, and I was about to discover that the Thompson family's criminal legacy wasn't finished with us. The warning came in Eleanor's voicemail at 2:47 a.m. "Martha, don't go home tonight. He's been watching your house for 3 days." I was in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress about elder fraud prevention, when Eleanor called from her car outside my Denver home. Through her windshield, she could see a figure in the shadows across from my front door. "Who's watching me?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "Michael Thompson. L'ancien soldat son. He was released from Folsom Prison last week." My blood went cold. During our investigation of Nancy's criminal network, we discovered her son Michael had been running his own fraud operation from California. He'd been serving a 7-year sentence for mail fraud, but apparently good behavior and prison overcrowding had earned him early release. "Eleanor, get out of there now," I said. "Call the police." "Already did. They're on their way." "But Martha, he's not just watching your house. I followed him to Linda's apartment yesterday, then to Dorothy's neighborhood. He's tracking all of us." Within hours, Agent Mitchell had coordinated protection details for our entire team. Michael Thompson wasn't just stalking us. He was planning something that would make his mother and sister's schemes look like practice runs. Michael Thompson is different from Nancy and Christine. Agent Mitchell warned us during an emergency video conference. They were manipulators. He's violent. His prison record shows multiple assault charges, and he blames your foundation for destroying his family's business. "What kind of threat are we dealing with?" Linda asked from her Seattle safe house. "Michael's been communicating with other family members of romance scam victims, people who profited from their relatives' crimes. He's building what he calls the Payback Network, targeting fraud prevention advocates nationwide." Patricia, joining us from a secure location in Colorado, looked exhausted. "How many others are involved?" "We've identified at least 12 individuals across 8 states. They're not running scams. They're planning physical retaliation against people who've exposed romance fraudsters. You five are their primary targets. The next week was surreal. FBI protection, safe houses, and constant vigilance became our new reality. But Michael Thompson had underestimated us again. He thought we were helpless victims who'd gotten lucky against his family. He didn't understand that we'd become predators ourselves. Our counterattack began with Dorothy's brilliant insight. Michael thinks we're hiding from him. Let's give him exactly what he wants, a chance to get close to us. We designed a trap using the same psychological principles we'd learned fighting his family. Michael wanted revenge, so we offered him the perfect opportunity. A fake public appearance where I would be speaking at a senior center in Phoenix, with minimal security and easy escape routes. The bait was irresistible. A widely publicized event where Martha Thompson, the woman who'd destroyed his family, would be vulnerable and exposed. Michael couldn't resist. What he didn't know was that the entire senior center was filled with undercover FBI agents, retired law enforcement officers from our network, and military veterans we'd worked with through our fraud prevention programs. The audience, of elderly people, were actually some of the most dangerous individuals in law enforcement. Michael arrived 30 minutes before my scheduled speech, dressed as a maintenance worker and carrying a toolbox that surveillance showed contained zip ties, duct tape, and a knife. He planned to kidnap me during the event, probably to torture information about our finances and operations. He made it exactly 12 feet into the building before being surrounded by federal agents. But Michael's arrest revealed something that shook us to our core. In his hotel room, agents found detailed surveillance photos of our families, our homes, and our daily routines. Michael hadn't just been planning to hurt us. He'd been preparing to systematically destroy everyone we cared about. The most chilling discovery was a manifesto he'd been writing. The romance scam prevention industry has become more profitable than romance scams themselves. These women have built careers on our family's destruction. Time to show them what real destruction looks like. Michael was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, possession of weapons in furtherance of a violent crime, and interstate stalking. But during his trial, something unexpected happened. Nancy Thompson requested to testify against her own son. Michael learned violence from his father, not from me, she said from the witness stand, shackled and wearing prison orange. I taught Christine manipulation, but I never taught violence. What Michael planned to do to these women, that's not fraud, that's terrorism. The courtroom was silent as Nancy continued. Mrs. Thompson and her friends destroyed my criminal career, but they saved my daughter's life. Christine was heading toward violence too. Prison has given her time to get psychological help. Michael won't accept help. He only wants revenge. After Nancy's testimony, the judge imposed the maximum sentence. Mr. Thompson, your mother and sister committed crimes for money. You planned crimes for pleasure. That makes you far more dangerous than they ever were. 6 months after Michael's conviction, I received an unexpected letter from Christine Thompson in prison. Mrs. Thompson, I know you have no reason to trust me, but I wanted you to know that 3 more family members are planning retaliation against your foundation. My cousin David Thompson in Texas, my uncle Robert Thompson in Florida, and my brother-in-law James Mitchell in Oregon. They believe the family business should continue, and they see you as the primary threat. The letter included detailed information about their plans, their financial resources, and their psychological profiles. Christine had become our informant from inside the prison system. Why would she help us? Eleanor asked when I shared the letter. Because she's realized something her family never understood, I replied. We're not just fighting romance scammers anymore. We're fighting organized crime. And in that fight, even former enemies can become allies. The war against the Thompson crime family wasn't over. But for the first time since this began 5 years ago, we had an insider helping us fight back. Sometimes the best intelligence comes from the people who used to want you dead.